Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday. So much going on in the world. There are two major stories. The number one story, of course, is the fact that interest rates remained fixed despite the fact that the gross domestic product grew by 3%. So the American economy is thriving. The Trump economy is just beginning to take off. Deregulation will increase productivity, as will the online investment into AI, the ongoing investment is what I meant to say, into AI of $1 trillion a year, $2 trillion a year. And yet interest rates remain where they are. The Fed announcing no interest rate cuts. Two dissenters came out and said we need to cut interest rates. And one president also came out and said that today. Donald Trump in the White House Roosevelt Room, when he signed a veteran housing bill earlier today, cut number 10.
What you do is you lower them, and let's see if there's inflation. Right now, there's no inflation. Everybody thought there would be. All we have is billions of dollars of cash pouring into our country from other countries that took advantage of us for many, many years. You know, they were taken advantage of. We were like the stupid people that didn't know what they were doing. They took advantage of us. Other countries, friend and foe. And by the way, the friend was oftentimes much worse than the foe when it comes to trade. So if that happens, what you do is you raise your rates and you do what you have to do to stop inflation. But we're keeping the rates high, and it's hurting people from buying houses, and we don't want that. If for any reason that happened in a year or two, if there's some signs of inflation coming back, right now there's not. We have a great thing going. I think we're going to have the richest economy you've ever seen. We have money coming in that we've never even thought about at numbers that nobody's ever seen before. We have a deal with Japan where they're going to pay us $550 billion. We have a deal with Europe where they're doing $750 billion plus $400 billion plus $300 billion. And many other countries, it's likewise, you know, relatively, those are two big ones, but likewise. So we have a lot of money coming in, and we have no inflation, and we're very strong, and we should be lowering the rates. You know, each point that this gentleman keeps up costs us $365 billion a year. Think of that. 1 point, $365 billion. If you bring it down a point, we save 365. We should be the lowest interest rate, and we're not. We're 38, number 38, because of the Fed. It's all because of the Fed. He's done a bad job. Now, he's got a meeting today, but I call him too late. You know, he's always too late. Even if he does it today, probably won't. I hear they're going to do it in September, not today. For what reason? Nobody knows. But Europe, as you know, cut their rates 11 times in the last short period of time. But the good news is we're doing better than anybody anywhere in the world. Nobody's doing anything even close to us, even with the higher rates. The higher rates do affect housing, though, because people can't go out and get a loan or refinance their house, and it would be nice to...
All right, now I wanted to stop there because AndrewandTodd.com are sponsors of mine. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, and they assure me people can get loans. They just have to pay a little bit more, and they also assure me that if you get your loan now, if you move now and you buy your home now, they'll refinance you as many times as you need to be refinanced. AndrewandTodd.com are the very best in the business. They did my loan when I moved from California after 27 years back to the Beltway. They've done Dwayne's loan out in California. They've done loans for everyone in Salem. They've done loans for thousands and thousands of Hugh Hewitt listeners and watchers on the Salem News Channel. Why? Well, they've been my sponsor for 10 years, and they are very credible. But the big reason is they're a bank. They're a Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They're actually a lender, and they underwrite the loan no matter what you need. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, they'll do that. If you're a first-time home buyer and you want to put a lower down payment down, they'll do that. If you're a senior citizen, you need a reverse mortgage, they do that. They underwrite the loan, so they get into it with you. They help you repair your credit. If you got a few dings, they get it done. They get it done in lightning speed by the terms, by the standards of the mortgage banking industry. But you got to call them to get started, 888-888-1172. And I'll give you that number again in a second. I'm reading the Wall Street Journal story today. There are 12 members on the Fed. Jerome Powell is the chair, and he generally sets the policy. But there are 12 members on the Fed. 2 members of the Fed broke publicly today, Michelle Bowman and Christopher Waller. They wanted to cut a quarter point. I think they want to cut a quarter point every meeting for the next 4 meetings because these rates are the highest in the world, and we're not quite sure I hated inflation. Inflation had to be killed off. It's dead. Down to 2.5%, maybe lower than 2%, and tariffs are not going to add to it because tariffs are bringing in a lot of money and we have substitutionary power when it comes to good. It's not going to cause inflation. It just will not because America has the biggest supply. We are the biggest kid on the block when it comes to setting the rules. So there really is no reason for this now, and too late. I don't use nicknames, but I understand the president's nickname. We ought to get going. They're going to get going in September, and I imagine it'll be a quarter point every 2 months for the next 2 years. But here's what you really need to know. I'm not a prophet nor the son of a prophet. What you need is a mortgage banker who will take care of you when it's time to refinance the loan because interest rates have dropped so that it makes it sense for you to do so. Don't wait any longer. It is a buyer's market right now. Prices will go up again once people get into the market and they begin getting back and buying up those houses that are cutting their prices. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. Coming up today in the final hour, I just taped it. An interview with Haviv Redistricting. Now, Haviv is the smartest guy I know on Israel, save Dr. Michael Oren. But I can't get Michael for an hour at a time. And Haviv is 40 years old and not in his 60s like Michael and I are. So he's going to be living with this problem in Israel. And we are surrounded by stupidity. We are really surrounded by stupidity on Gaza and on Hamas and on Israel. The pod bros, the kids who were junior speechwriters, I think is what Hunter Biden called them last week, in the Obama White House, who've been dining out on that for a long time with the Pod Save America bros. They went full anti-Israel yesterday. I'm going to play that for Haviv. Let me give you a taste of it, though. Cut number 5.
And I don't think Democratic candidates should take money from AIPAC or vote to fund military support for Israel anymore. Like, I really don't. In this government, absolutely not. And that especially includes, I think, the next Democratic nominee for president.
Things I want to see Democrats at least calling for is cutting off military assistance to Israel. Yep. It's a rich country, by the way. They don't need our $3 billion a year. And hands up, right? Barack Obama signed a 10-year MOU for $3.3 billion a year. So we're part of the problem here. Mm-hmm. Let's correct it. I would like to see talk about sanctioning Israeli government officials who use genocidal rhetoric or who talk about ethnic cleansing openly. We should support a ceasefire resolution at the UN. We should demand that international press be allowed into the Gaza Strip to report on what's happening without an IDF minder. It's insane. The press still can't go into Gaza and cover what's happening. And I also think there has to be a total mindset change in the Democratic Party. When the war ends, we are not going back to the pre-October 7th status quo because it's not where the party is. It's not where the world is. We're not going to shovel billions a year in military aid. We're not going to veto every effort to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN. We should not take money from AIPAC. And I will hold out hope for better political leadership in the U.S. and in Israel. But we have to also recognize that the Biden era hug Bibi Netanyahu strategy has to be thrown in the trash can forever. Netanyahu is a bad actor. He's continuing a war for political purposes. He bombs Lebanon when he wants to. He bombs Iran when he wants to. He bombs Syria when he wants to. This is not a partner we can count on. This is not someone who is leading to calm and stability in the region, which should be a core interest.
At this point, cutting off military funding for a government that is starving 2 million people and advertising how they're ethnically cleansing the Palestinians seems like the least we can do.
Especially if we're going to head into a primary, table stakes is going to be no more military aid for Israel. So there will have to be a shift. And I do think that will mean putting far more pressure on Israel. And that's what I think Democrats want. By the way, that's what the country wants. And when you poll Israelis, they say they want a ceasefire. Israelis want the hostages returned through a negotiated settlement. And by the way, that's the way in which the vast majority of hostages who were returned were able to be returned.
They're silly people. And I don't think they would pass a basic AP Middle Eastern history test. They are deeply invested in the JCPOA because President Obama was, and they were all wrong about that. Their buddy Ben Rhodes, the Metternich of MSNBC, very wrong about Iran, the paper tiger that it turned out to be. Trump took out the Iranian nuclear program. Obama was afraid of it. These guys live in fear. But what they live in fear now is of being insufficiently radical. And look, they're 4 white guys in their 40s, and they're afraid of losing the Democratic Party, which doesn't really much like white guys in their 40s. So they're becoming more and more radical. They're not getting smarter, that's for sure. But I'll ask Haviv Redistricting about that afterwards. Let me take my relief factor because I got 6 of the grandkids out of 7 now, and I really need this. I was at the playground today with my hammy that's getting better because I took 2 relief factors for the last couple of days. Here it is in front of me. Take it every morning, every single day. And if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you saw me do it. If you're listening on the radio station, all across the United States. You just heard me do it. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4RELIEF, or go to their website, relieffactor.com. Find the starter pack for $19.95 and then feel better. The new thing at the playground is a kind of a new, the spinning wheels that used to be made of wood and leave splinters the size of a guitar in your leg. Those are gone. They've been replaced with plastic things that weigh 1,000 pounds. So I need Relief Factor every single day. Go to relieffactor.com, find that starter pack, less than $1 a day, relieffactor.com. I want to introduce my new audience of 92.3 WZPR FM in the Outer Banks of North Carolina to Sarah C. Bedford, Chief Investigative Reporter at the Washington Examiner. Do you ever go down to the Outer Banks, Sarah?
I've not been, but I grew up in the South. It was a very popular destination.
Yeah, well, we're now there. We're in Hilton Head. We're all up and down the coastal region, and of course in Atlanta and in Asheville and all throughout the South. Sarah, I have one thing I want to know about, which is the number of nominees that the Republicans are going to get confirmed. Question number one. Number two, is Mike Waltz going to be among them because the debates on the Middle East matter so much?
Well, Mike Waltz is certainly a top priority for this administration, as was Emil Bove, a Third Circuit Court nominee, Jeanine Pirro in the U.S. Attorney's Office here in D.C., but also dozens and dozens of others. I mean, there were roughly 140 nominees on the docket as Senate Republicans were preparing to go on their August recess. And now President Trump has been putting pressure on those senators not to take their vacation, to stay here and work through those nominees, or else open up some other procedural avenues like recess appointments for those nominees. The writing is on the wall now for Senate Republican leadership that it's time to start clearing their way through the Democratic delay tactics and move these nominees. So I do think you will start to see some movement as there's renewed urgency here.
Now, the highest priority was, I know, Judge Emil Bove. I thought he got confirmed. That moved, I thought, Waltz to ahead of anyone else. Did they do Judge Jean before they did Waltz?
Yeah, I don't believe that Waltz has been confirmed yet, Pirro either, but Bove was really high priority, especially because there was a really concerted Democratic effort, which you haven't seen on the part of Walz and others, to get Bove's nomination tossed. They had a whistleblower or someone who they described as a whistleblower come from the Justice Department who had worked with Bove there in the early weeks of the Trump administration come forward with claims about Bove trying to defy judges' orders, which did not actually happen. The Justice Department has not defied any judge's orders so far. And so Democrats were working really hard, particularly Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee, to stop that particular one from moving forward. So that was certainly at least a symbolic victory for Republicans that they were able to muscle past that.
Yeah, but too bad, because you got a lifetime appointment on the Third Circuit now, and it's not going to change. He's a fine legal scholar, and he'll be a terrific judge. I'm going to hit the third time, though, on Waltz, because the UN matters to me a lot. I'm going to spend the entire third hour with Aviv Reddy-Gore talking about the information war over Israel. We need our man at the Security Council. Is there anyone that will talk about the order? Tom Cotton told me earlier this week that Mike Waltz would get confirmed this week. I just haven't seen anything since. Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything about him specifically in terms of the order in which these committees and then the full Senate floor is trying to move. But this is a top priority for the Trump administration, right? They need him at the United Nations. Trump wouldn't have nominated him for that position had it not been a really, really high priority. And so you do see that pressure from the White House now on Senate Republicans to move these nominations forward after other things like the One Big Beautiful Bill and rescissions had taken precedence. Now Donald Trump is saying, all right, this is your top priority. It's the nominations.
Okay, last question. The 3% GDP growth number today, that's an annualized basis. That doesn't mean that we're going to have 3% by the end of the year. It could be more, could be less, but it's a big, healthy number, and it was much more than the 2.3 that was projected. Did anyone talk to you about the fact that that occurred after all the tariffs? Meanwhile, tariff money is pouring into the United States, and we're not in a recession. Does anyone? I don't like tariffs either, but that's sort of classical economy. That's what Reaganites believe. Is anyone saying, well, maybe Trump was right and I was wrong, and admitting that they were off mark on tariffs?
Yeah, Hugh, if you read legacy media today, you would think the economy was in a lot of trouble because they're finding every metric to sort of report that out. You had mainstream media outlets reporting that, consumer sentiment is down or trying to find some numbers that spin the economy as being bad when you do have really healthy top line economic numbers that are defying expectations of all the people who said that tariffs were going to plunge the US into a recession. That's simply not happening. And these sorts of numbers are certainly going to add to Trump's frustration with Fed Chair Powell that the interest rates still aren't moving.
Yeah, it's so funny, Sarah. Just one last thought. I've listened to a lot of podcasts today. I read a lot of commentary. I'm a free trader too. I'm very skeptical about tariffs, but the numbers are the numbers. He's going to get $300 billion in revenue as opposed to $35 billion 10 years ago from tariffs, and the economy isn't shrinking. There are a lot of reasons that people give me that, but maybe Trump's smarter than we are. Does anyone ever say that?
No, the only criticism that you hear Democrats clinging to right now is that tariffs cause uncertainty. And, there's so much economic turmoil because of the uncertainty. But really, that clarity is coming from the fact that the tariffs are, as you mentioned, pretty successful in bringing in revenue.
Sarah C. Bedford, follow her on X at Sarah C. Bedford. Thank you, Sarah. You know what else I want you to follow? ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Great sponsor of mine, alec.org/Hugh. What do you get if you go to alec.org/Hugh? You'll get the State of the State newsletters. They'll keep you posted on everything going on in the laboratories of the states. Once a week, John Williams, or every other week, John Williams, their chief economist and CEO, joins me. And John really lays it out. But one of the things I really like, the wonderful Senator Rucker, who was the original prime mover of school choice in the United States. She did it in West Virginia. She got West Virginia to adopt school choice. Now it's in 17 different states. ALEC follows it like nobody else. To get their newsletter, you go to alec.org/Hugh. It's absolutely free. And in the latest edition, you'll find out that West Virginia is leading the way again. I want to read to you what I found out from ALEC. West Virginia passed 5 new election laws during its 2025 legislative session. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 5 new election laws. Governor Patrick Morrisey signed them all. Number 1, they explicitly require U.S. citizenship voting at every level. No crazy left-wing Hamlet gets to go off on the side and let non-citizens vote. Number 2, you've got to show ID. And that is done to prevent non-citizens from voting. So it's a voter ID state now. Number 3, they are keeping their voter rolls current by flagging inactive voters after 2 years. Used to be 4. Now, if you don't show up for 2 years, they toss you off. They have banned ranked choice voting. It is a mess wherever it's used. It's a mess in New York. It's a mess in Maine. It's a mess in Alaska. Progressives thought this up as a way of just totally screwing up vote counting. It's been banned in West Virginia, and it requires municipal elections held on the same day as state primaries. So I want you to remember, head over to ALEC, alec.org/Hugh to get the State of the State newsletters. So much is going on in the United States every day, and we never find out about it. Sort of like the world. There's too much going on. I had a guest on yesterday, Mark Ellis from godreports.com, and he and assistnews.net, and he told me that last week in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 38 Catholics were murdered with machetes and burning in their church. I hadn't seen it anywhere, wasn't covered anywhere, but now I know about assignnews.net. And when you get alec.org/Hugh, you'll get the State of the States newsletter, and you'll find out about stuff like voting integrity reform in the state of West Virginia. So be smart. Don't get stupid newsletters from inside the Beltway. Get newsletters from what's going on around the state. Hope your Wednesday is a good one. Coming up in hour 3 today, Haviv Reddy Gore is going to be joining me for an entire hour talking about Gaza, Israel, the pod bros who are so left-wing, they're losing it. Speaking of left-wing and losing it, Kamala Harris declared today that she is not, repeat, N-O-T, not going to run for governor. I suspect she looked at the polling, and I suspect she realized she hadn't got a prayer, that she wouldn't even win the Democratic runoff. Look, I got to explain something for the rest of the people in the country. California is insane, and they have a jungle primary. And the jungle primary is everybody gets tossed into the hat, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Socialist, Green, and out come two people. And those two people get to run. Usually it's two Democrats. But in this case, there are so many Democrats running that it's quite possible that we'll have Steve Hilton break through. Steve Hilton is the Republican favorite, all right? If I was still a California voter, and I haven't been since 2015, and really the last general election, gubernatorial election I voted in was 2014. I moved back to the Beltway in 2016. But I spent almost 30 years there, a total of 29 years of my life spent in California, so I know it pretty well. I met the fetching Mrs. Hewitt at a Pete Wilson fundraiser on Mission Bay in 1978. So I know Pete pretty well. Governor Pete is a great American. Interviewed George Duke Majan. Still waiting for Gavin to show up. He's told me he's going to show up repeatedly, and he never shows up. Jerry Brown's been on the show a number of times. I get along with every California. One of the California Democrats running for governor is Antonio Villaraigosa, former mayor of L.A., former speaker of the Assembly. I was an Antonio appointee to the California Arts Council for a number of years. I get along with Democrats. They're not rotten always. They're just wrong. There are a few rotten ones. I think the Pod Bros are pretty rotten. And then I think this Comrade Mamdani, running in New York City is pretty rotten. But here we have the list. All right, so let me just run down. Tony Atkins, now President Pro Tem of the California Senate, and Speaker of the California State Assembly. I don't know if Tony is a man or a woman. It's Toni, so I suspect it's a woman. And I don't know what her politics are, but I suspect they're far-left lunatic. Javier Becerra. Now, I do know Javier Becerra, former U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services during the Biden COVID ridiculous rule era. Also former Attorney General of California, which nothing memorable happened then. Carolina Bueller. Bueller? She's a college student. Stephen Klubeck, founder of Diamond Resorts. I'm not kidding you. Zoltan Istvan, founder of the Transhumanist Party. That's Dwayne's candidate, I'm pretty sure. Can you get Zoltan lined up, Dwayne? I just think the name is interesting. Elena Konalakis, who is the Lieutenant Governor of California. The only time I've ever filed to run for anything in my life was to be Lieutenant Governor of California. And I filed for it, and I had to pull my papers after a week because I couldn't run as a joke. My network, Salem, said, no, you can't run as a joke. You'll get a foul of FCC thing. So I dropped out, which was unfortunate because I promised to be elected and then resign immediately because the lieutenant governor doesn't do anything. Katie Porter, Batwoman, Nutter from the South Coast, Betty Yee, they're all in there, and it's possible Steve Hilton will do it. That's what I'm hoping for. Let me tell you about Consumer Cellular, one of our great sponsors, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. You can go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Whether you talk to them, and you'll connect with them very quickly when you call 1-800-411-4454. Tell them you're a Hugh Hewitt guy. Use my code HUGH25. That will get you $5 off each of your first 5 monthly invoices. There is no reason to sacrifice service and quality for savings. Get them both. Before you call about how much it will cost you to your new bill, which you'll save money. The moment you don't cost anything to switch, you'll immediately switch over to the new plan. For example, 2 lines of unlimited data if you're 50 and over for $60 a month. But you don't need unlimited data if you're 50 and over. You usually need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. You save a lot of money. But you can keep your number, you can keep your phone, keep all your contacts, keep all your emails, all that stuff. You might get a new device as well with Consumer Cellular. But mostly they're about saving you money. And their demo is they want to talk to people who are 50 and older. So they set up their call centers in the United States. You only have to hit one button before you're talking to a real live American somewhere in the United States of America. Call them at 1-800-411-4454. And remember to mention HUGH25 to get the $5 off your first 5 bills. Or simply visit consumercellular.com/Hugh. Texas Republicans in special session today. released their new vision for the congressional districts in Texas, they are allowed to redraw their maps because of a civil rights ruling that they got something wrong the last time. So this time they're going for the throat, and they're going to try and pick up 5 Republican seats in Texas. Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul, governors of California and New York, respectively, are whining and complaining, but those states have constitutional prohibitions against mid-decade redistricting. So they should lose in their courts. Trouble is, their courts are left-wing lunatic courts, so they may go along. We might have redistricting wars, and we usually only have redistricting wars in the first 2 years of a decade, but we might have redistricting wars. The key thing is the economy, the economy, the economy. And the economy grew at 3%. In fact, I was just checking in on the market, and it's a down day on the market today. It's going to close down because Jerome Powell had a meeting, and they didn't lower interest rates. They did not lower the prime, which is the overnight. I'm going to talk about the Fed funds rate with former Congressman John Campbell, who was chairman of the Fed subcommittee on the Finance Committee, and knew Ben Bernanke pretty well. I don't think he knows Jerome Powell. And John's a smart guy. We're going to talk about this stubbornness. For the first time in 30 years, 2 members of the Fed publicly dissented from the Fed's refusal to cut rates. That never happens. A lot of frustration, a lot of question about the politics. Trump's been beaten up on the Fed. Now, that's not new. Presidents jawbone the Fed all the time. They want lower rates, or they want lower rates, or they want lower rates. Presidents like lower rates. It's not always responsible to lower rates. But we had 3% growth in this quarter. It's not like it's 10%, and it's not like inflation is roaring along. What, 2.4% the last report that we got? It's sort of crazy not to do it. Now, the market report is brought to you by American Federal. AmericanFederal.com is the go-to people for buying or selling your gold or other precious metals or coin collection. Mostly they just buy and sell gold. Their number is 800-221-7694. 800-221-7694. Whether in New York City or Los Angeles, the people to deal with are Nick Grovich and his team at American Federal, because it's very straightforward, very transparent. Gold got crushed today. It lost $57 an ounce. It's down to $3,321 an ounce. So if you've been waiting for a noticeable dip, that's today. There was a dip yesterday. It got up above 3,400 just last week, and I don't know why. I don't have any explanation for that, and I don't know why it lost $57 an ounce today, but it's down at $3,321. Now, if you call up Nick Grovich today at 800-221-7694 and say, Nick, I want to buy gold, he's going to say, number one, how much do you want to buy, and what do you want to buy, and why do you want to buy it? Then number two, if you figure out how much you want to buy and why you want to buy it and when you're going to buy it, he's going to say, get me the money, and you can wire him the money or send him a cashier's check. They don't sell gold on credit card. They got to make their commission off of the cash, so they bank the cash. Then they fix the price. Then they deduct the commission, and it will all be discussed with you before the transaction. That's why I love them. There's no mystery. They're not trying to sell you an IRA. They're not trying to sell you any kind of insurance plan or a flip back, double jack special coin that just came from a mint in Belarus. No, they sell American Eagles or Canadian Maple Leaves or Krugerrands, single ounces, or they'll sell gold bars, and they don't shave it off with their fingernail. They've been doing this for 44 years. Straightforward, transparent, best guys in the business. If you go to AmericanFederal.com, you'll learn all about them. But remember the number, 800-221-7694. Write it down. You've been thinking about buying gold for a long time. Well, today was a dip, down $57. Doesn't mean you'll get that. It could go up $100 tomorrow. Gold is a roller coaster. But the spot price is the spot price. Gold trades 24/7, 365. So you got to get the spot price. You got to get your money to Nick. He'll talk you through it. And the good thing is, never been sued, absolutely transparent. I recommend him without reservation. I bought my gold from him in January. I will do so again in January of this year. I do it in January. Some people buy every quarter. Some people buy every month. Some gold bugs only have gold. That's not me. I believe in diversity, 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 which means I'm going to talk with our friends from Key City Capital next hour. I'm diversified in real estate as well. I don't want to own a rental, but I want to own a slice of an apartment building, and that's what Key City Capital does. I'll tell you about that next hour. But American Federal is the person to buy gold from. Nick and his entire team, 800-221-7694. Now I want to go over to the president, had a press conference today about the Veterans Housing Bill, and our friend Derek Van Orden of Wisconsin. We love Derek Van Orden, former Navy SEAL senior chief. He got a couple of words in, cut number 14.
Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us here. I'm the longest-serving enlisted member of the United States military to ever get elected to Congress in the history of our nation. And I'm unequivocally stating right now that President Donald J. Trump is the most positive, pro-veteran president in the history of this country. And so he backs up his words with deeds, and this is another example of how President Trump is taking care of our veterans. So, sir, I'm very thankful for you, for your leadership, and let's get this thing done and get our veterans into homes. So God bless you, and God bless the United States.
Can we play that again? Not only do I love Derek Van Orden, I love the fact he is the longest serving enlisted man who has ever served in the United States Congress. Do you know how many years we're talking now? 250 years. Actually, it'll be 250 years next July 4, but the Army got started 250 years ago. So 250 years. Derek Orden is the longest serving enlisted man. So let's hear him again, cut number 14.
Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us here. I'm the longest-serving enlisted member of the United States military to ever get elected to Congress in the history of our nation. And I'm unequivocally stating right now that President Donald J. Trump is the most positive, pro-veteran president in the history of this country. And so he backs up his words with deeds, and this is another example of how President Trump is taking care of our veterans. So, sir, I'm very thankful for you, for your leadership, and let's get this thing done and get our veterans into homes. So God bless you, and God bless the United States.
Some of you are saying, I know that guy. Where do I know that guy from? Well, if you saw the movie Act of Valor with Rourke Denver, based on the SEALs actually made it. They used it easier to turn SEALs into actors than actors into SEALs. They made Act of Valor probably 15 years ago. Derek Van Orden was the senior chief there, and he was the senior chief for a number of years thereafter. He's been everywhere, done everything, and he can't talk about it. But Derek Van Orden is a hero, and he's a great member of Congress, and we are glad that he's there at the White House today. It has been less than 4 weeks since the Mystic Camp disaster. The floods in the Texas Hill Country that took 136 lives. There are still 2 people missing, so that number might rise, and destroyed, ravaged a very large region of the Hill Country. Many people lost their homes, lost their businesses. Of course, families are mourning. 136 lost loved ones, including lots of beautiful little girls, a dedicated camp manager for 40 years. It was really tragic. But the news cycle marches on and forgets quickly, because we had a shooting in Lorain, Ohio of a police officer. We had a shooting in Midtown Manhattan of a wonderful woman who was a great investment banker with a wonderful husband and 2 kids. We lost one of the New York's finest as well. Terrible things happen every day. The Gaza story is front and center. I'll spend all hour talking with Aviv Redigur. But I haven't forgotten Texas. And our friends at Food for the Poor have not forgotten Texas. The CEO of Food for the Poor is here to talk to us a little bit. Ed Rain is the CEO. Stop by to update us on the campaign.
Tell us specifically about Food for the Poor here and what you've been doing to help those flooding victims over in those terrible Texas floods.
We are an organization that responds in times of emergency. With respect to the Texas program, we have sent kits, actually, just like your sons were packing yesterday. So a lot of those kits are already over there, and we're in touch with the on-the-ground organizers there to see what else they need. But whatever, that was such a severe set of circumstances that those needs will be ongoing.
Food for the Poor usually operates in Central and South America, sometimes in Haiti. When disaster strikes, rarely do they throw it all in with a disaster in America, but they saw what happened in Texas, and they're all in, and they're asking you to be all in. $50 sends another box of supplies. $100 sends 2 boxes. They are meeting the needs of the people. They have a great partner organization in San Antonio. Food for the Poor has been sponsoring campaigns with me for decades, because I trust them, I know them, we contribute to them. You can give in a number of ways. The Help Texas banner is over at the top of HughHewitt.com. That's the easiest way. But maybe you've forgotten about these people and you regret that you forgot. You meant to give some money and you didn't. Well, you can do it right now. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Or you can even text my name, Hewitt, Hewitt, to 51555. Any of you out there thinking, I know that the tax law is changing and I want to make a big contribution, you can do it with the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com, Help Texas, or you can call 855-359-4673 and say, I want to give $5,000 or $50,000 or $50. Doesn't matter. Widow's Mite or a massive amount of money, you can do it through the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com or by calling 855-359-4673. If you're in a safe place, you can do it in your car, by voicemail. Don't look away, of course. 855-359-4673. And thank you for your generosity. My special guest, Mary Catherine Ham, Fox News contributor and co-host of the Normally Pod, as well as host of the Getting Hammered Pod, which is on hiatus, though I think they're going to have their semi-annual episode soon. Is that true, Mary Catherine? Is there going to be a semi-annual episode soon?
Well, Vic's going to have something to say about Sydney Sweeney, so we probably should get on it.
I have here, I'm glad you used her name, because I have here Nazi jeans as the subject matter for you to tell. You were explaining a little bit to Steve. I saw it online. I didn't know anything about the Nazi jeans lady. Tell me all about this, because they mentioned it on the commentary pod and my head hurt.
Yeah, no, it should make your head hurt. It's very, very silly. Sydney Sweeney is a starlet who is beautiful and of buxom proportions, I would say, delicately. And she has been hired as a spokesmodel for American Eagle jeans because she looks hot in jeans. And a lot of people are overthinking this, mostly lefty influencers and TikTok insane people who say that because she says she has good genes, which is a play on words, it's jeans and jeans, that is a racist dog whistle and it's about eugenics and Nazism. And that's insane. That's insane. And the question is it a real controversy or is it just like 12 people who are mad? But here's the problem. The left is governed by the 12 people who are mad. They're governed by that TikTok fringe. And in fact, Good Morning America is governed by it because they're doing segments on whether this is Nazi propaganda. It's a hot chick in jeans. The more you guys overthink this, the more you problematize it, the fewer young men you are going to attract to the Democratic Party.
Now, Mary Catherine, there was an era when I used to pay attention to advertising, and American Eagle had a competitor, Abercrombie and Fitch. Yes. And Abercrombie and Fitch would put out purposefully suggestive photo shoots of young men and young women that were designed to enrage the church ladies in the country. Yes. And they did. Every single time they enraged the church ladies. And the church ladies would, and they'd shake their fists and they'd be all upset. Is this that? I mean, is this actually American Eagle getting me to say American Eagle and getting you to say American Eagle?
Maybe a little bit. I have thought about American Eagle more than I have in the past 15 years. However, I think they lucked out here with the left's insanity. I'm not sure they could have planned it going this well. And I have to say, it's rather anodyne as far as like being sexually forward. I mean, she just looks great in the jeans. It's not horribly like the church.
It's not Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Abercrombie and Fitch?
Oh, for sure. And the thing is, I think what they might have anticipated is that Sydney Sweeney, because she's hot and seems like kind of like a fun chick who likes cars and is normal, I think they might have anticipated that she's right coded and she's a vibe shift in and of herself. And as an Atlantic writer hilariously put it, she is an embodiment of the idea pushed by conservative commentators that Americans should be free to love boobs. And the idea that that's controversial, it's wild, and that they turn it into this sort of discourse is so off-putting.
Now, when you say they, I have Haviv Reddy Gur coming on next hour, and he's going to talk specifically about the idiotic Proud Boys and their rant about Israel that gets very close to the anti-Semitic line. That I put a name on him. Who are the Sydney Sweeney they? Do we have any real people behind it?
Well, Yeah, this is my point, right? Is that I think this became something I call a cultural reply all, which is that, when an office replies all to the whole office and everybody keeps replying all to tell them to stop replying all, there's a little bit of that going on. Like, there's not that many people who are very angry about this. But again, I say the problem with the left and with the party, the Democratic Party, is that they are often led on, certainly on cultural issues, by their fringe left TikTok ranters, right? So if you have 7 of those folks, the rest of the party doesn't have what it takes to tell them, Sydney Sweeney is fine. Stop complaining.
Okay.
They don't have
Now
that.
I have to really show my hand. Who is Sydney Sweeney? I don't know who she is.
She's a young Hollywood star, and she's beautiful. And she once got in trouble, actually. She's right-coded partly for this reason. She threw her mom a birthday party, and she got in trouble for this because in the online photos, people were wearing red hats that said "Make 60 Great Again" because it was her mom's 60th birthday, and she was supposed to feel terrible about this. She did not, so good for her.
Well, good for. So, did she make a movie that I missed?
I mean, she's made a romantic comedy with Glenn Powell. She was in White Lotus.
Not going to
I think,
see that.
Notably, yeah.
No, problem. Okay, not the demo. Second thing I want to talk to you about, Kamala. Kamala is not running, and I'm frankly a little bit surprised. What do you think?
Isn't the most disappointed person Steve Hilton, who could have run against her?
Oh, yes.
As a Republican in
yes.
California. Look, there's not a demand for Kamala. She says her leadership will be outside of elected office for the time being. I don't know what leadership she's talking about. She's been invisible, basically. No one's interested in her leadership, and I think that she probably saw that. I don't think she's learned a ton of lessons from 2024. I don't think she's going to impart those to the party. And I guess it's good news for all the other Democrats who want to run in California. It'll be interesting what the 2028 field, how they move after this, the Democrats, because this does leaves the door cracked for her to consider that. But man, there is no demand for this product.
By the way, what do you make of Rahm Emanuel showing up with Megyn Kelly?
I think he's trying to be sort of sane, and he's the person who's willing to say, Sydney Sweeney's hot, get over it, right? And the thing about Rahm is that he's actually pretty good at not getting bullied because he's often the bully. So perhaps it'll work, right? When they come for him, he can just be like, I'm Rahm Emanuel. I don't take that.
Now, he's been mayor of Chicago. You know Chicago rules. Everyone knows Chicago rules. And Rahm Emanuel's from Chicago, so he's not going to be bullied by the left-wing nutters. All right, the last thing I want to ask you about is really, when do we get Getting Hammered back?
I'm working on it. It's a big summer. We're trying to find it a home. We will. I am endeavoring, Hugh. I know that I've let you down, and I am working on it because you would know.
More importantly,
if I had been on the air.
You have let down the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, who you are in her ear as her companion whenever she's out doing her trundling. And so, last question, which is apropos of nothing. I have all 7 grandchildren here for 2.5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So I don't want to leave the studio ever. I'm just going to stay in the studio 24/7, 365 for 3 weeks. How many grandchildren do your parents have?
I believe, let's see, 1, 2, 6, almost 7. One on the way.
Almost 7. So have they ever done this? Have they? I call it sort of the Olympiad of grandparenting, when you get all 7 plus the 6 parents.
No, I don't think they've done that many, although it's on the horizon. We could do that because everybody's going to be in my hometown but me coming up soon. So I could travel down there and make it happen.
I want you to, because I want to know if they survive. This is not a question, it's a data point. We have a new affiliate on the Hugh Hewitt Show, which is 92.3 FM WZPR, which is in Nags Head and covers all of the Outer Banks. Now, you're a North Carolina girl. Do you like the Outer Banks?
I do like the Outer Banks. I was just in Atlantic Beach, which is like a separate part of the area. But I love the North Carolina coast. Yes, everyone get there one time in your life. It's beautiful.
Oh, we used to go all the time when we were young, and it was close to Washington, D.C., and it was better than driving to Cape Cod. It was closer. But I got to ask you this question. At the time, it seemed much more chill than Hilton Head, than Ocean City, Maryland, than the Jersey Shore, than Cape Cod. Do you agree with me about that?
Yes. It's sort
Why
of the
is
charm
that?
that it's a little quaint. It's sort of the charm that it's a little quaint, and I don't know if it's just the amount of real estate available that has made it sort of form rules and construction situations and development rules that make it a little bit more family oriented and quaint seeming. But yes, it does have a more chill vibe. We like it like that.
More houses on stilts than any place I've ever been in my life. Mary Catherine Ham, MK Hammer on X, and you can listen to her Normally podcast, which she co-hosts, and we hope that Getting Hammered is back soon. Thank you, Mary Catherine. I want to remind everyone I'm sponsored by Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. Took it in hour number 1. Not taking it in hour 2 because my hamstring is almost better, almost 100%. I did something to it on Sunday, doubled down on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and I'm almost better, and I credit Relief Factor, and I think you ought to try it. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. If you were watching in hour number 1 on the Salem News Channel, you saw me take it. If you're listening on a vast radio affiliate, of which our new friends in North Carolina are a part, the Borg, I call it the Hugh Hewitt Borg, you heard me take it. You can call and get a 3-week starter pack at 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to their website and find that starter pack, $19.95, 3-week supply at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. That's less than $1 a day, $19.95 after 3 weeks. Those pains and aches will go away that are minor and nagging. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or relieffactor.com. That, of course, is The Farmer and the Cowboy Should Be Friends from Oklahoma, the 1966 Rodgers and Hammers. I play it. I think it's John Campbell's new theme music. John Campbell, former chairman of the subcommittee on the fire committee.
I don't know. Somehow I forgot that song from Oklahoma. I know some of the other songs from Oklahoma, but not that one. Anyway,
You
yes,
don't remember
go
The
ahead.
Farmer and the Cowboy Should Be Friends? The cowman should be friends. So you are a cowman, and I have a new affiliate in North Carolina. So I got to tell him, you are responsible for California's degraded state, probably last night's tsunami. You were in the California legislature, the California State Senate, the House of Representatives. You were chairman of the subcommittee on the Federal Reserve. I have 3 things to talk to you about: Sidney Sweeney, Jerome Powell, and cows. So which order do you want to go in?
They're all similar. They're very, very similar.
They're very-
and highly related. And so
Yeah.
you go. It's your show. You go in whatever order you
All right,
want.
well, tell me about the cows. You've been planting cows, and the return on the cows is good?
For those of you who didn't listen to the podcast that Dwayne and I did some time ago, Dwayne used to talk to me about being a cow farmer. So I had to explain what that song just did, is that farmers plant crops and ranchers raise
Chase
cattle.
cows.
And you don't,
No, they
and you
chase
don't
cows.
And you don't plant cows into the ground and then cows come up. Dwayne still thinks that's what happens, that it's not. But yes, we have a herd of cattle out there in Kansas. And the reason this was brought up is that the price of cattle, the price per pound of cattle on the hoof, of fed cattle, feeder cattle, et cetera, is at all-time record highs. The reason for this is that the demand for beef is still high. The demand for beef is basically not related to the price. It's related to its delta versus chicken and pork and other proteins. People in America always prefer beef if they can afford it. And if it's not much more expensive than chicken, they'll almost always go for beef. And that's the situation today for various reasons. But if you're going to, the herd is the smallest it's been in decades right now. The number of actual hooves out there running around eating grass and corn is the lowest it's been in a long time. Why is this?
We got to divide by 4, don't you?
Well, yes, you do. Yes, you do. The 3-legged ones aren't worth much. But
No.
if they're worth a lot of money,
And the 2-legged ones you don't want to sell.
as much as Dwayne thinks you take the cow, you dig a hole in the ground, you put it in there, and cows grow up from it. That is not what happens. In fact, you take a heifer, a female cow, and you inseminate them either naturally or artificially, and they get pregnant, have a gestation period, have a calf. You feed that calf, the mother feeds that calf, the cow does. The calf grows and eventually makes another cattle that can
I thought
become
maybe the price was
become
up
hamburger.
because President
But
Trump got Japan to accept American beef.
there's
That
a
got
little
anything to
bit
do
of
with it?
that. Yes, I think there's a little bit of that, and also I believe in the deal he made with the UK that there is no tariff on U.S. beef to the UK. And the Brits like American beef because they've watched American movies and they've seen the cattle run across the plains. And so that excites them about that kind of beef. That has something to do with it. But so the price is going up. You have to do what's called retaining a heifer. In other words, you have a heifer, you could send this heifer off, sell it to slaughter, turn into hamburger, etc., or and get a lot of money for it, or keep her and do the thing you need to do to get a calf out of her, which is going to take 1.5 years or more. And what a lot of ranchers are saying is, you know what, I'm going to take the money now. And they're not retaining heifers. So the herd is not growing, and the herd is in fact.
Well, the answer to high prices is high prices.
High prices.
That's the answer to it. All right, now let's move to Sydney Sweeney, because during the break you informed me I had in fact seen a movie with her in it. I do not remember it.
It was called Anyone But You. It was out 1 year or 2 ago. The Captain, it's a rom-com. The Captain, Mrs. Campbell, and I saw it. It's a very light, funny, clever rom-com with 2 very attractive young stars. And we liked it, and I totally agree with Mary Catherine Ham. Sydney Sweeney is hot. And so we liked it. We told you about it, and you and the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt went to see it, and you sent us an email. We both remembered very well, and we laughed about it. Like, as you left the theater and said that was the worst movie you'd seen in years, what were we thinking? And the Captain Mrs. Campbell and I discussed that, the Hewitts' taste in movies and our taste in movies is quite different, and this is proof of it.
Very different.
So anyway, you did see it. And so I've been following this whole Sydney Sweeney thing. And in fact, I've been giving a lot of speeches lately. I gave one yesterday. And I was pointing out that American Eagle Outfitters, a year during the Biden era, had an ad with an overweight black lesbian and some transgender people in it. So they were following the mood. They are following the new mood. And so they have Sydney Sweeney, a hot
They just want to sell jeans. They just want to sell jeans.
And she gets in a 1965 Shelby GT 350, gets in the driver's seat and burns rubber in it while smiling. There's no less woke car out there than a 1965 Shelby GT 350, maybe a GT 500, but that's the least woke car there is. So they are seeing the change in the culture, the change in the zeitgeist that Mr. Trump is bringing to America. Thank God for this.
And why isn't Jerome Powell seeing the change in the zeitgeist? And why is he sticking? Is he, 2 members, first time in 30 years, 2 members dissented?
Yes, and those are 2 members who are vying to be the successor chairman to Mr. Powell. And the way to be on the short list to be the successor chairman with Mr. Trump is to say, I am for lowering interest rates. And so they are doing that right now. And that is a message to Mr. Trump that, hey, we're with you, buddy. Look at us, a chairman or vice chair or various other things that the president can appoint.
We have 2 minutes. Do you agree or disagree with Powell's decision not to move the rates?
I actually agree with Powell on this and not Trump. And in 2 minutes, I will just say the Federal Reserve has to look at 2 things. What's happening with unemployment, basically, and what's happening with inflation. And right now, they don't see threats to unemployment, which is a good thing. And it's something Mr. Trump wants. He wants unemployment to stay low, and he wants that. And that the threats out there are more likely on the inflation side of things, where certain things, we just talked about the price of beef, and other things that are going up and going to continue to go up probably by a little bit. So they don't want to lower interest rates because they're more afraid of inflation than they are of unemployment. And so that's the reason he's staying there. Mr. Trump wants interest rates down because, in part, because he's a real estate developer. He's a guy who likes debt. He likes to borrow money. But if he lowers interest rates, he will hurt savers. And savers are a whole lot of his voters. They're a whole lot of seniors and people who save money and put it back. If he were to get what he wants, a 1 point lowering in interest rates, then basically the income of a whole lot of people who save money will drop by about 25%. And so it's not all good either way you look at it, to be frank. And so that's why you have to balance these things as to what's going on. The market reaction has been to actually have interest rates go up a touch because they think the chance of a Fed rate cut in September is less than it was 24 hours ago.
How interesting. But also not particularly as interesting as cows. We're definitely not Cindy Sweeney. What's her name? Sydney Sweeney. John Campbell, I'm surprised at the ubiquity of your knowledge. It's everywhere. It's about all-encompassing, especially farmers and cow runners should be friends. Thank you, Congressman Campbell. Follow him on X at JBT Campbell. Ty Lassiter joins me once a month. He is the president and CEO of Key City Capital, which is one of the sponsors of the Hugh Hewitt Show. I have to go over this every time, but I want my new listeners in North Carolina to know Ty and I are investors together. He's a sponsor of the show. I'm an investor in Key City Capital. Number 3, you cannot invest in the fund that I invested in. Number 4, you have to be a qualified investor to invest in any fund that Ty runs. And number 5, read the prospectus before you invest. But Ty and I talk real estate. Ty, are you disappointed with Jerome Powell today and his decision not to lower interest rates?
Well, I think disappointed is to say the least, but it was kind of expected. I was actually on a couple of shows this morning, and we were already making the assumption that that was going to be the case. And I think, at this point, we're so far along, and I think there's a twofold factor. Number one is I think he's scared and scared of what may or may not come of him adjusting rates. And number two, I think he's playing a political game at this point, and it's out of spite. And so obviously he left rates where they were, but I think we see what that did with Wall Street. Wall Street was expecting, or Wall Street knows that a rate cut needs to happen at this point. I think we're all okay with inflation with where it is at this point. And so we had a 170-point sell-off today, or maybe it was about a half a point. And what that means is, really it's time to take a focus. We get into the market, we get into the equities when it's low. We buy low, we sell high. And right now we're seeing an all-time high. We're seeing some correction starting to happening with a looming facing market correction. And so what we're looking at is an opportune time to really redeploy at this point. Take some earnings off the table and move that into a more stable physical aspect investment play, which is really where we see real estate right now. And because the interest rates are still high, we're seeing some prime opportunities when you have the cash and the liquidity to take advantage. And when interest rates come back down, then we'll go back out to the debt markets and replace some of that cash with debt. And so it's creating some huge opportunities for us right now.
Now, I want you to especially tell people, I've got a new affiliate down in North Carolina on the Outer Banks, and they're in our target demo. They're qualified investors living in their retirement dreams down there in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. What does Key City Capital do? What are the joint ventures that you make available, or limited partnerships that you make available to investors? Minimum investment of $100,000.
Well, that's a perfect market, the Outer Banks. It's much like you opened us down in Naples. We got into Naples with your listeners down there. And so similar demographic. But really what we do is we're the headache of what comes with real estate. You and I talk about it a lot. We deal with the tenants, termites, and toilets and those problems that come along with it. And we partner alongside with our investors. We have about 750 now. We have 600 million in assets under management. And we do the back lifting, the back hard work. And our investors are passive investors. They get to participate in what I really focus on as the 4 keys to optimizing an investment performance. And that's cash flow, that's equity increase, appreciation, and tax advantages. And so our investors have a limited risk model in that they are limited to the risk of their investment. But they don't have to deal with the banks. They don't have to deal with the debt or any of the things that come with that. And they still get the benefits, the tax advantages of owning real estate.
Now, we invested with you years ago in fund number 3. What fund are you on now?
We have fund number 14 open right now. We have a $5 million tranche that we're looking to allocate right now. We've got about $3.5 million of that committed already. So we've got about $1.5 million of space available on a deal that we're working right now for fund number 14. So it's moving quickly. I expect to have a closing in the next 45 to 60 days on that and take advantage of a really prime piece of property right now. As it pertains to the market and the economy as a whole, we're taking advantage of what inflation has really done to a lot of small property owners that have a few assets here and there. And so we're coming in and going to take over with where they are in the value add space on this project and build from there.
If you want to invest with Key City Capital, go to keycitycapital.com/Hugh, get the prospectus, read it, and then call Ty and his team. Who's your leading investment advisor other than you, Ty? Who do people normally talk to in the client relations over at Key City?
Absolutely, that's Stephen Patterson. So he has a background in financial advisory and used to work with Ameriprise and was really looking to get outside of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds because all those brokers are always pushing their deals that they're going to get fees on, and was looking for private equity. And so Stephen Patterson has been here with us for going on 5 years now.
So go and talk with Ty, talk to Stephen, keycitycapital.com/Hugh, get the prospectus, study it. Remember, just because you heard Ty talk about it on the radio doesn't mean by the time your money gets there that the fund will stay open. You've got to, if you're interested in this, it's just a limited partnership. You invest in it and then you write it out, and we're very happy with it, but that's up to you. Got to be a qualified investor. Thank you, Ty. Brand new audience in North Carolina on the Outer Banks, 92.3 FM, WZPR. They're in Nag's Head. I want you to know that your next guest, Selena Zito, is a weekly regular and has been for, I don't know, a decade. And Selena is a New York Times bestselling author for the third week in a row with her bestseller, Butler. You got to go out and get Butler because the rest of the country's already read it, and it's going to be a major motion picture of which it's already begun pre-production with the scene already shot. But I am curious. I was listening in to you and Dwayne talking about who's going to play Selena. I do not like Marissa Tomei because she's got TDS. So we got to find somebody else, Selena.
I know. We just have to find a mature Italian with this hair.
Wait, you're not. Your Ohio roots weren't Italian. They were Irish, weren't they?
Scots.
Scott. So we could find a mature Scot. We can go get, but they all have TDS. They've all got TDS, don't they?
They do. And you know, the book is really about journalism, right? And preserving boots on the ground journalism and how important it is. And yeah, but because it also has an assassination attempt in it, it's not going to.
It's Hillbilly Elegy meets all the President's Men. It's really that good. And all the President's Men here happen to be competent, like Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. And it's a blow by blow, not just of the day of the assassination, but the 2024 campaign. And people should read it. Selena, I would like to get your take on the fact I have not yet seen you on a Sunday show. You've got the number one book 2 weeks ago. You have been on the list for 3 weeks. Not one Sunday show has put you on. What's going on? Do they not want to hear the truth?
Not CBS, not NBC, not ABC. New York Times did not review it, nor did the paper that I work for, the Washington Post, review it. And it's a testament to new media, to be honest. Because on the exact same day that my book, right, which is about middle America, and I live in the middle of somewhere, America, right, and it makes the number one best-selling book, beating out every book on that list, added up. And it got there because of shows like yours, right?
Well, you were on with the fellas on the Ruthless podcast, too. We got to point that out. We got to give the fellas their due.
But this is all new media, right? This is all new media. It's center-right media. And it shows you how the power has shifted. This is very much the book of 2024. Why Josh Shapiro wasn't picked for vice president is in there. It's not why you think. Right.
By the way, Kamala Harris today decided she's not going to run for governor. I think I'm out on a limb here. I think what your portrait in Butler about her is a good reason why she's not running for president. Do you think she read it? I think she did, and she decided, I can't fix this.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But man, I really struggle covering that race because there's an entire chapter called There's No There There. And it had to do not only with someone who would be a full-blown candidate that is able to communicate with people, but also a full-blown campaign. People on the left have forgotten what it means to earn the middle of the country's votes, to earn middle America's votes. And so that no there is multiple of reasons. And it's part of why Josh Shapiro is like, pass. because he's very
Yep.
successful in my state in terms of
I really do
government.
think that if she read Butler or her team read Butler, they took it to her and said, "You can't run for governor. You're going to get crushed for the reasons that are detailed in Butler." I got to ask you a quick question, Selena. Haviv Reddick Gore is coming up in hour 3. I'm going to spend the entire hour with him talking about the Pod Bros melting down. They become anti-Israel, maybe even anti-Semitic, and they represent the left wing. The Democratic Party's down to 8%, very favorable rating. They're in a death spiral. How do they pull out of this?
Well, we've been asking that question since November. It's been almost a year. We've actually been asking that question at about this time last year because it was clear after that RNC convention and the enthusiasm and the young people and how culture had shifted to the center right, right? The power of culture was in the center right, and they don't know how to navigate it because they are so beholden to the loudest voices in their party, which is the far left. There are plenty of Democrats that have become part of the Republican Party that would be okay with moving back with the Democrats if they behave normally. But instead of reaching back to what worked for them, especially as New Deal Democrats, instead of reaching back and taking some of that, they are completely running away from it and going to a corner that is very unappealing to most of the country, not half of the country, most of the country.
Most of the country. I've been talking about Sydney Sweeney with a bunch of guests today. Do you have a take on that yet? Because I don't know who Sydney Sweeney is, even though I saw a movie that she was in, apparently.
Okay, so that ad, that was like me and all my girlfriends in 1977. Jean shirts, jean pants, blue jeans on, right? Preferably if your parents had you had Jordache on. But that was us. That's how we dressed. That was considered normal middle America. And every color of skin wore it in when I at Perry High School in 1977. That's who we were, and we loved it.
So there's still a left wing that gets a hold of a thing like this ad, which is just like the Jordache jeans ads, or it's just like the Abercrombie and Fitch ads of those days, and they call American Eagle Nazi, and they call her a Nazi because she uses the word. It's in the genes, a play on the word Jeans, Genes. It's crazy, and they don't appear to be wanting to lose their crazy anytime soon, Selena. But I'm going to ask my texters, who should play you in the movie? I'm going to put it out on my subtext list, and we'll find out, because Marissa Tomei is unacceptable no matter how good My Cousin Vinny was, right? No matter how good that movie was, we can't have a TDSer playing Selena Zito because you haven't got TDS.
No, I don't. I'm just, boring and normal.
Boring, normal, and a good reporter. It might be you might have sold it because of new media, but it's good because you're an old-fashioned journalist. Selena Zito, follow her on X at Zito Selena. Go over to Amazon, get the New York Times bestseller Butler right now, and join the rest of the country in reading what is the hottest book of the summer, nonfiction. Just sent a note out to my subtext friends. If you're a member of the universe, you get so much. You get, I think, every episode of every show I've ever done, 25 years worth. You can look it up and find all the Trump interviews and all that kind of stuff. But I also read all the subtexts I get from my subtexters, and you've got to join the universe in order to do that. I also read all the comments over at my YouTube channel. If you like and subscribe, you may opine, something I stole shamelessly from the Ruthless podcast. But I just sent this out to my subtexters. Hey, friends, if you heard Selena Zito right now, her new book, Butler, third week on the New York Times bestseller list, has been optioned by Hollywood. So, who should play Selena in the film adaptation of Butler? Don't say Marissa Tomei, TDS. And that's my question to my subtexters. I usually put questions. I read every subtext I get. It's only open to the members of the universe. I try and read all the comments over at my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt YouTube. And sometimes, if you are not nuts, I read the comments on X, where my account is Hugh Hewitt. I've got a Facebook page, which is run by the program people. But I really want to tell the new audience on 92.3 FM, the Salem Radio Network, home in the Outer Banks, located in Nags Head. Get used to Selena. She's a really popular feature of the program. Once a week, we check in with her, even though she is a Yinzer. Bad news for the Browns, by the way. You folks in the Outer Banks, I don't know if you're Panthers fans. Russ and Aaron are, and that's very unfortunate. There's division in my in-laws, but they root for the Panthers. But I am a Browns guy and have been a Browns guy since birth, and so Martin Emerson went down to a Achilles, which is like the worst injury other than a head injury in football or paralysis. It's 2 starters from last year's team out on injured reserve all year, Jeremiah Russo, JOK, and now Martin Emerson. And that's unfortunate, but we do have Greg Newsome who can step up, always been a first-team corner to begin with. He'll be playing corner opposite of Denzel Ward. It's part of the NFL. Injuries, unfortunately, part of the NFL's prayers for Martin Emerson's quick and speedy recovery. Let me remind you, more than prayers are needed in the hill country of Texas. The devastation of July 4th and the Mystic Camp disaster that tore all of our hearts less than a month ago, they're still rebuilding. People lost everything, houses. It wasn't just camps. It was houses, homes, businesses. So Food for the Poor is sponsoring a drive, and people are giving $50 and $100 and $150, and some people gave $1,000. Anyone can give more. Just go to the banner at hughhewitt.com. At the very top, it says Help Texas, or you can call 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-4673. Tax deductible. Thank you in advance. You're all very generous. I appreciate this audience so much. 855-359-4673. When disaster strikes, we identify someone like Food for the Poor, and they step up, and you step up. Thank you. Coming up, Haviv Redig-Gur, Times of Israel senior analyst, now Middle East correspondent for the Free Press, the host of Ask Haviv Anything. We're diving deep into Gaza with Haviv. Joining me this hour from Israel is Haviv Redig-Gur, senior analyst for the Times of Israel. He's the host of the must-listen-to podcast, Ask Haviv Anything. I urge you to like and follow it, become smart. Haviv, welcome. How have you been, and how was Martha's Vineyard? It was news to me that there was a Chabad on Martha's Vineyard.
It's fairly recent. It's only 4 years there, but it's a vibrant, exciting community, and I gave a talk there and did a podcast episode. And just also, as of last week, Middle East analyst at the Free Press. Important to say they're wonderful.
Oh, yes. I'm very thrilled with that when I saw Barry posted that. So congratulations. They need that. So I will put that in future introduction. Haviv, I want to start with this question. Do you know the Pod Save America bros?
Yes. Tommy Viter's name is something we're familiar with in the Middle East, and I heard the clip.
Okay, well, let's play the clip for the audience because I want to get your reactions to this clip. For the benefit of those, including my new audience down in Nags Head in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which we added yesterday, I want you to know the Pod Save bros were what Hunter Biden called junior speechwriters in the Obama administration. They did invent kind of the format of podcasts, but they may have been eclipsed by about 100 other podcasts now, but they are definitely being eclipsed by the Ruthless podcast. Here's what they had to say about Israel yesterday.
And I don't think Democratic candidates should take money from AIPAC or vote to fund military support for Israel anymore. Like, I really don't. In this government, absolutely not. And that especially includes, I think, the next Democratic nominee for president.
Things I want to see Democrats at least calling for is cutting off military assistance to Israel. It's a rich country, by the way. They don't need our $3 billion a year. And hands up, right? Barack Obama signed a 10-year MOU for $3.3 billion a year. So we're part of the problem here. Let's correct it. I would like to see talk about sanctioning Israeli government officials who use genocidal rhetoric or who talk about ethnic cleansing openly. We should support a ceasefire resolution at the UN. We should demand that international press be allowed into the Gaza Strip to report on what's happening without an IDF minder. It's insane. The press still can't go into Gaza and cover what's happening. And I also think there has to be a total mindset change in the Democratic Party. When the war ends, we are not going back to the pre-October 7th status quo because it's not where the party is. It's not where the world is. We're not going to shovel billions a year in military aid. We're not going to veto every effort to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN. We should not take money from AIPAC. And I will hold out hope for better political leadership in the U.S. and in Israel. But we have to also recognize that the Biden era Hug Bibi Netanyahu strategy has to be thrown in the trash can for ever. Netanyahu's a bad actor. He's continuing a war for political purposes. He bombs Lebanon when he wants to. He bombs Iran when he wants to. He bombs Syria when he wants to. This is not a partner we can count on. This is not someone who is like leading to calm and stability in the region, which should be a core interest.
Like at this point, cutting off military funding for a government that is starving 2 million people and advertising how they're ethnically cleansing the Palestinians seems like the least we can do.
Especially if we're going to head into a primary, like table stakes is going to be no more military aid for Israel. So there will have to be a shift. And I do think that will mean putting far more pressure on Israel. And that's what I think Democrats want. By the way, that's what the country wants. And when you poll Israelis, they say they want a ceasefire. Israelis want the hostages returned through a negotiated settlement. And by the way, that's the way in which the vast majority of hostages who were returned were able to be returned.
So, Haviv, ready, Gert, your reaction?
Well, gee, there's a lot there. Military aid. Let's tackle that. That's the only actionable thing. The starving 2 million people. There's real hunger in Gaza. It is not starvation, and it is already being reversed. And tremendous amounts of aid went in and could not be distributed. And I think the Israeli government and military and pieces of the Israeli military that are the opposite of the kinds of political forces that those people are complaining about, which I also dislike in the Israeli government, but nevertheless, they also screwed this up. And so there's a really complex problem of how you deny Hamas the kind of control of aid that it had and still not reach the point we have reached. I think this is a major strategic failure for the Israelis, but nobody is systematically or willfully starving 2 million people. And in fact, 2 million people are not going to starve. And the current hunger is real. I've been talking about it for a month, talking to Israelis about it, raising a stink about it. And thank God that the actions are being taken now that will reverse it and prevent anything bad from happening, anything systemically, dramatically, massively bad. So, they're running on talking points that they heard in basically a kind of media environment that is basically a bunch of information ops. In other words, Gazans are suffering. Gazans are absolutely suffering. And for some reason, the New York Times still feels like it has to lie about it. In other words, they are suffering. But the emaciated child that the New York Times put on the front page as a kind of Catholic pieta to show that the all of humanity was on the stake and the Israelis were Pontius Pilate, that kind of imagery is utterly unrepresentative next to this child who is horrifically ill, but next to him is a perfectly healthy child, and that perfectly healthy, and they didn't mention that this child had other health problems, and therefore that this is not representative of the starvation in Gaza. And the tragedy is that there are 150,000 dead and 2 million people in a far greater state of hunger and almost starvation in a place called Sudan that the New York Times doesn't bother with at all. In other words, it's faking a Sudan-scale famine where there isn't one. And anyway, they're lying to you, even when they don't have to, because they could report on the actual suffering of Gazans. It's a war. You should, if you want to oppose the war, you should oppose wars generally. I happen to think there's a problem with Hamas. You don't have to listen to me. But they're still lying to you, even though Gazans are. So all of that stuff, I ignore. I ignore it because it's untrue, and there's nothing I can do with it. I can't stand and, turn my pockets out and ask them to know the truth when they don't want to. The main thing.
Well, I don't lose any sleep over them, Habib, because they represent a fringe within a Democratic Party that is historically ranked at the lowest level it has been at, 15% approval, 8% very supportive. Those guys are part of the 8%, and their talking points are AI generated from the left wing of the party, and I doubt any of them, or collectively, they could get a pass grade on a pass-fail exam of Middle Eastern history, much less Israeli history. I played it for you because it is representative of the punching bag that Israel has become in the American political left. Does that alarm you?
It doesn't. It doesn't. He had a good point. I think that was Viter. We're a rich country. We got rich by being a smart country and being a country that invests in R&D, I think, per capita more than anyone on earth. And we have good policies and we have thoughtful leadership. And that's been true for the last 7 prime ministers, not just this one. We have universal health care. We have a very high life expectancy. You want to withhold that aid, fine. One of the reasons that America started helping Israel strategically and militarily was to actually hold Israel back and calm the Middle East. because Israel has enemies that will destroy their own polities to go to war with Israel. Iran has spent hundreds of billions of dollars and basically shattered its economy for 25 years in a bid to destroy Israel, which is an entirely religious vision that makes no sense because Iran has absolutely no interest in Israel, no border with Israel. The same is true of, Netanyahu bombs Iran, bombs Lebanon, as if he's just randomly bombing things. These are organizations, these are regimes that have told us they will murder every last one of us for 30 years. And we've built up for 15 years. We spent like a quarter of our economy developing the capability to take out their capabilities, and we did it, and it was astonishingly competent. And thank God we did it. And by the way, that American aid, you co-own so much of what we invent. If you were to give $600 million right now to the American defense industry, they're too consolidated, there are too few actual defense contractors in America to actually be innovative and competitive. And so the Pentagon has this habit of side-skirting unbelievable American red tape and waste and just handing the Israelis a few $100 million, and then America co-owns Iron Dome. And nobody in America would have invented it because they didn't believe it was possible. So, you want to assume everyone in the Pentagon is an idiot. You want to assume every president since Kennedy who has believed in a military alliance with Israel is a moron. You can assume that. And by the way, if you take it all away, what do you think? We're not going to fight Hezbollah? You think Iran is not going to
I'm baiting you a little bit, only because these guys are never going to win the spelling bee. They are deeply emotionally invested in the JCPOA. They're part of Team Obama that got shown to be completely foolish. And they really liked the Iranian deal, and they're very upset that Israel, with Donald Trump delivering the knockout punch, destroyed the Iranian nuclear pretend man and exposed them as a papier-mâché tiger. And they're very, very upset about that. But I wanted to, the American dialogue is changing, and anti-Semitism in the United States is rising at an alarming rate, and I know you know that. And these guys are kind of the pointy edge of the left wing. They're never going to be significant beyond their little podcast, but they are representative. You can be significant. You can be representative without being significant, and they are representative of that part. If the Democratic Party runs on that, my party, I'm a Republican, will be president, holding the presidency for the next 25 years if they run on that. I got to take a break, then we'll come back and talk about the complexities of Gaza. I want to remind my audience, all yesterday I spoke about Gaza. The basic facts, it's 140 square miles. There are 250,000 structures within it, and there are 20 living Israeli hostages hidden by 15 to 20,000 terrorists still left alive, holding the rest of the 2.1 million people captive. There is no famine. There is a food issue. It is being relieved, and we always want to repeat the facts. I'll be right back with Aviv Redig-Gur, who you ought to follow on X at Aviv Redig-Gur, talking just about Gaza today for the rest of this hour. My guest this hour is Aviv Redig-Gur, one of the key analysts for the next 30 or 40 years in Israel about Israeli politics, and he comes to America frequently, and he is very eloquent and very smart. Aviv, I wanted to focus on Gaza, not Netanyahu, not the opposition, not the coalition, nothing like that. Your crazy attorney general, nothing, just Gaza. And I gave the facts as we were going out. What do you think the options are on the table, and which one do you recommend, or do you hope to see the Israeli cabinet take? Annexation, occupation, declare victory and leave, or continue the current slow grinding operation to remove the last 15,000 Hamas terrorists?
The ideal is separation. I mean, the ideal is to get the hell out. It's deeply costly for Israel. It's profoundly damaging for Gazans. It's a war, and obviously ending it and pulling out would be the ideal. We can't leave Hamas in Gaza. I don't even say that as a recommendation for policy. If we leave Hamas in Gaza, nobody can rebuild Gaza. If we leave Hamas in Gaza, Palestinians will suffer more, and there'll be another war in 5 years. Hamas has only done one thing in 40 years. We can't assume that 5 years from now it'll be doing something different. This actually has to end with the removal of Hamas, and then Gaza has a new day and a new dawn. And without it, Gaza doesn't have that new day and new dawn, even without considering the Israelis. It's just literally who Hamas is. And so my recommendation, my frankly frustration with the Israeli government has been with the Israeli warfare in Gaza, which contrasts so much to the unbelievable competence we saw in Iran and in Lebanon. In Gaza, we have not seen that competence. We basically have three wars. We have a ground war in Gaza, and we have a humanitarian war. And what do I mean by humanitarian war? Hamas has been engaged with Israel in a game of chicken. It can handle Gazan suffering. and in a way that Israel can't handle Gazan suffering. I know that runs afoul of the general media consensus in the United States, but in fact, whenever Gazans are hungry, it is Israel that will always blink first. And Hamas will then steal huge amounts of aid and will then use it to sustain its war effort. And Hamas doesn't mind Gazans starving, and the world also will come to Israel with those kinds of expectations and demands. So that humanitarian aid war, to me, Israel hasn't seriously thought through. It keeps trying to come to the brink with Hamas in a thing that Hamas will only possibly win. There's a moral issue here, obviously, but the strategic issue is also not useful. I think we flood Gaza with massive amounts of aid until aid is worthless in Gaza. That's A. And B, there's a third arena besides the ground war, the actual kinetic war and the aid war, which is the information war. I mean, just the massive amount of global attention. Yes, it's rooted in all kinds of crazy Western anti-Semitic kind of paradigms and archetypes in the Western mind. And yes, nobody cares that 150,000 are dead in Sudan. And yes, it's only ever Israelis saying it, so everyone brushes it off. And the poor Sudanese, they wish they were fighting a war with Israel because then somebody would notice. But fact is, there's this massive information war. Now, I genuinely don't care what the world thinks of me. I'm an Israeli Jew. We emptied out of 3 continents to build Israel because we no longer trust in the moral standing of the rest of the world. So I do not care what the rest of the world thinks of me. I don't think the rest of the world knows enough, and I think it's running these morality plays in its head out of deep ignorance. However, Hamas is sustained, and its war effort is sustained by this global discourse that favors Hamas, not just the Palestinian side, Hamas. For example, the British Prime Minister, in his wisdom, has just declared that he will recognize a Palestinian state if Israel doesn't agree to a ceasefire by September. A ceasefire that Israel has already agreed to and which Hamas has rejected just 2 weeks ago. What? He's actually offering Hamas recognition for the Palestinian state in exchange for and pressuring Israel to then agree to something. Hamas just has to sit tight and Britain will come forward and give Hamas recognition for rejecting a ceasefire. So, the world is very silly, but this silliness sustains the Hamas effort and gives Hamas the ability to argue in the Arab world and Arab media that it is somehow winning. We need to.
I'm going to come back to the UK, but I want to go back to the kinetic war because I can't get over the fact that Gaza is denser than Manhattan and Hong Kong, and that there are 20 Israelis there, that the kinetic war has got to get it back before they go and try and kill the 15,000. Does Israel have to abandon the 20 people, Haviv? Because that which gets rewarded gets repeated. We're going to see a lot of Israelis taken hostage around the world now, I think, given the value that Israel is putting on the last 20. To win kinetically, don't they really have to risk the lives of those 20?
Hamas can't survive this in Gaza. That's not a thing that can happen. Our people are sacred to us. The idea that we defend each other, that solidarity is fundamental to who we are, because we're the last, because 90% of us are the grandchildren of refugees, because we're the last living Jews in the Eastern Hemisphere, generally. That's generally the historical experience. So we have therefore been willing to pay any cost to get our hostages back in the past. And we have taught our enemies, we have trained them to understand that they should take our hostages because then they have strategic leverage over us. And so right now what we have to do, and I am in a minority of Israelis when I say this, and I say this with great trepidation and fear and shaking hands, we have to go after Hamas as if there are no hostages. And go after those hostages with everything we have, every intelligence asset, every commando asset, to try and rescue them. But we have taught our enemies to take those hostages, and now we have to teach our enemies that it is catastrophic to take our hostages. We have to teach them the opposite lesson.
That is clarity. It's strategic clarity. I also think it's moral clarity. Haviv Redistricting is my guest this hour. Haviv, you mentioned Keir Starmer. We can add Macron to this collection of left-wing morons, and I really do think they're morons. President Trump got asked about this on Air Force One last night, flying back from Great Britain. Here's what the president said.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp. to be honest. We'll let you know where we are in, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas, and I'm not about to do that.
So Haviv Reddy Gore, the president and you share this opinion. This is fundamental, like geopolitics. It's not really quadratic equation geopolitics. It's fundamental. It's 2 + 2. They get that which gets rewarded gets repeated. They will attack again and again and again. Does anyone not understand this and they just are ignoring it, or do they not understand it?
I'll say more than that. Yeah, it's so blitheringly obvious that it really is astonishing how utterly just out to lunch these people are. I'll just say one more thing. Hamas is doing this to them. Hamas is doing this to Macron. Hamas is doing this to Keir Starmer. Hamas is saying this is an all or nothing war, and the only way to support Palestinians is to support Hamas. And they're falling for it. Imagine for a moment that you're Keir Starmer. Your heart goes out to Gaza, and your backbench is rebelling against you over Gaza. Wouldn't it be great if you could support Gaza without incentivizing Hamas to actually continue the war and brutalize Gazans as well as Israelis more, forevermore, and to claim they're winning something fundamental? Wouldn't it be great if you could support Gazans without that? Well, that's exactly the story of Hamas. There is nothing that these people can do for Hamas that Hamas won't undo. Can do for Gaza that Hamas won't undo. They will try to support Gaza, and Hamas will use it to destroy Gaza. They will try to send aid to Gaza. Hamas will use it to make sure that that aid doesn't actually help rebuild Gaza. They will try all the moral things, and Hamas will ruin it for them. And they're not going to figure it out now. They'll figure it out in a year or in 2 or in 5. If we get rid of Hamas, Keir Starmer's moral emotions will maybe actually matter. Until then, all he's doing is telling Hamas, keep it up.
Haviv, I think you're kind of right smack in the center of Israeli politics, as far as I can tell. I really don't know if you're kind of a little bit Likud or maybe a little bit. I don't. You're right, but you're definitely not hardcore right and conservative. Do you think that the people in France and Macron and Starmer, they're far left? Do you think they're doing it for political reasons, that they're just satisfying a Muslim vote in their countries or their backbenchers? Or are they actually doing it for moral reasons and they just don't understand?
I mean, the way it works with politicians is that they genuinely believe that they are doing the thing that happens to fit their politics out of deep, principled concern. And I have covered politicians for 20 years, and it's an amazing thing how the thing that works for them politically is also the thing they have always believed anyway. And by the way, they're not lying. They both think that they're important to the leadership of the country, and so what advances them is inherently important to the country, but also they genuinely, think that these things are equal or the same. So I don't know. My impression of these two, for example, Netanyahu thinks that he can do anything he needs to stay in power because he's the man who will save Israel and the Iranian nuclear program. He genuinely believes it, and he's lived his life that way. With Macron and Starmer, I can't help feeling from watching from the outside, and forgive me to the French and the British for commenting from the outside, that they're cowards. They're just deep cowards. There are no real serious, courageous policies on the rise of Islamic law as legal institutions in their countries, on all kinds of social problems, all kinds of poverty problems. Israelis, with all the problems Israel faces, Israelis are richer per capita than the British today. Britain is a country in a kind of slow-moving free fall, and nobody's even brave enough in the British leadership that I have seen, and again, I'm watching from outside, to even talk about it seriously. And so you have all of these enormous problems in their country. Why does he have time for Gaza? And that's a question. So to me, that's fascinating. I think he's actually a coward, both on real problems that the British face and also on Gaza. You want to smack Israel around and pressure Israel to have a different policy toward the Palestinians? Get rid of Hamas, because Hamas keeps telling Israelis they're going to come for their kids and murder them till the end of time. Hamas is neutralizing Macron's and Starmer's ability to actually influence Israelis, and they don't grasp that, and so they just keep playing into Hamas's game. It's cowardice, it isn't morality, and I don't respect it.
I doubt anyone in Israel does. You got a couple of far left organizations that agree with them. Michael Oren set me straight about how far left and wacky they are. Haviv Reddy Gore is my guest. You can listen to him whenever he posts at Ask Haviv Anything. He also does occasional podcasts and reporting over at Times of Israel and for the Free Press. Haviv, I want to switch to the north a little bit. Your episode on the Druze was eye-opening for me. I didn't know anything. Oh, I knew a little bit the Druze were in Israel and they were in Lebanon. I didn't know they were mostly in Syria, and I didn't know what was going on there. There's been a massacre there and a bloodbath there. Not many people know what's happening. I would recommend that they go back 3 or 4 episodes and ask Haviv anything and have Haviv talk to the Druze Israeli who spoke so passionately. She was a fabulous guest. Has it stabilized, and do you think Israel has sent a message that Jolani will respect, which is stay away from the Druze?
Not enough. I don't know that Israel handled that incident well. I think we've handled a great many of the problems in our region extraordinarily brilliantly, but both Gaza and on this question of southern Syria, I think there was a little bit of a worse kind of strategic thinking. The Druze are divided in Syria. There's a little more complexity. That episode was an hour. We talked a lot about who the Druze are, their religion, their history, their connection to Jews over a long period of time. But the Druze are nevertheless in Syria divided into different factions. There's a lot more complexity there. And there's a lot of people around the world who want Jolani to bring stability by imposing himself on as many parts of Syria as possible. For example, the Trump administration, if I were in the Trump administration, that would not be an unreasonable policy, but it actually flies in the face of what the Israelis need from Syria, which is a buffer zone pushing off a future potentially Turkish adversary that is essentially taking over Syria as a client state. And the defense of the Druze. The defense of the Druze is fundamental to Israeli policy in the north, and keeping that Syrian border from ever being militarized again in the way Iran was trying to militarize it with Hezbollah opening, divisions on the Syrian Golan. So all of those complicated things all put together is to say, I'm not sure Israel got what it needed. It bombed Syria's government, literally, headquarters in Damascus, to stop the Bedouin Sunni militias and government forces from attacking the Druze. A massacre went ahead anyway, and other Druze wanted the Druze of Sweda to stop the fighting because they wanted to be part of the unified Syria, so to speak. So it's a mess. It's a mess. I do think it's a good thing that Israel flew the flag of defending the Druze. That was something that we owe morally to the Druze, and I think it's politically good for us to show that we back an ally. But I don't know if the situation there will stabilize over the medium term and be safe for them.
All right, now I want to return to the kinetic effort to end Hamas. 15,000 fighters. The Israeli war dead since 10/7, I believe, is at 488 and maybe closer to 500. I don't know every incident that's happened in the last week. Is that Vietnam, and is there an option where overwhelming force... I agree with you. Flood the zone so that food loses its value. That is actually a strategically viable option. If there's so much food, Hamas can't sell it. They won't have any money. But if you can't have a Vietnam, which it looks like right now, do you have enough troops to actually go into the areas in this urban jungle and eradicate the 15,000, kill them all?
Yes. The question is at what cost? At what cost for Gaza? At what cost for Israel? There are the amount of troops. There's the ammunition. I don't know what the things you need. The hostages will probably be lost. And more than that, when you do that, you need to replace it with something. In other words, if you do go in and demolish that last areas that they're actually in, the IDF controls about 75% of the ground in Gaza. There's 25% of the ground it doesn't control, including the urban areas where Hamas remains deeply ensconced, and there are gun battles underway now. In other words, there's different pieces of Gaza where there are different Israeli military forces fighting various guerrilla groups of Hamas. So it can be done, but the question is, at what cost, and if that's really the smartest way to move forward.
So what is the limit that Israel can endure? It's been 2 years. 488 times 30 is what the casualty count would be in the United States. We could not do that anymore. It's far and more on a per capita basis of casualty KIA than we suffered in Iraq or Afghanistan. How much suffering can Israel bear with these young men, and I read every obit that the Times of Israel puts up. They're all 18, 19, 20. There are a few master sergeants, but it's awful.
I mean, it's not Vietnam. It's not Vietnam in the sense that it isn't very far away. And it isn't believed by the Israeli populace to be, ignorable and avoidable, and ultimately just a kind of Vietnam was a war fought essentially over an international relations theory, the domino theory and communist expansion. And it might have been a good theory. And by the way, where the American troops did stop the Soviet advance, Korea, for example, those countries flourished, and they're free today because of it. And so it wasn't necessarily a bad theory, but it was very, very abstract and theoretical. There's nothing theoretical about Hamas. Nothing at all. Hamas is a vengeful, vindictive enemy that will brutalize everyone under its power, and it will brutalize the Israelis for all time. And Hamas has told the Palestinians, as a matter of fundamental principle, it's an all or nothing war. It doesn't want a peace. It has bombed every peace process we've had in the 40 years since it was founded in 1987. And it believes that only one people are allowed to survive this. And they're creating a zero-sum conflict, demanding a zero-sum conflict. So we have an implacable enemy that's willing to see the destruction of its own polity in order to destroy us because of a grand religious vision. And it's right next door, and it will find any hole in our defenses and come through it at all times, irrespective of the damage caused to themselves and their people. That's not a Vietnam. That is not something that we'll ever let
There's
up
also
on. That's the tragedy.
There's also a half dozen members of the Politburo in Qatar. Should they be eliminated regardless of what Qatar thinks and the United States thinks and everyone else thinks? I know that Qatar has been operating as the middleman for a long time. 30 seconds to the break. Should Israel just serve notice they can leave or they'll be dead?
Yeah, 22 months ago. I don't know why they're alive. Nothing Hamas should be alive.
All right. I'll be right back for my final segment with Haviv. We talk about the strategic relationship between the United States and Israel. For my new listeners, I've always said I'm not a Jew. I'm not, I got no investment in Israel other than the fact that they are the strategic equal of any of our allies. And I think right now they are our most important ally in the world. And the United States ought to know that, even if the left wing of the Democratic Party doesn't, Donald Trump does. I hope you listen to Haviv Redigur, his Ask Haviv Anything podcast. I hope you follow him at the Free Press. I hope you read him in the Times of Israel. Haviv, you got 3 minutes here. What do you want Americans, not Jewish Americans, but Americans generally to know about this conflict? If we clip 3 minutes and you get 3 minutes of their attention, what do you want them to know?
A lot of what people are telling you is right. A lot of what people are telling you is wrong. It's a propaganda war. It's a big part of the war. You are subject to it. I apologize for that. It's not fair to you. The fundamental thing to know: you are allowed to criticize Israel. You're allowed to come to Israel with demands. There's military rule over the Palestinians that I voted multiple times to end, and many Israelis did, including right-wingers. But every time there was always this element of Palestinian politics that came swooping in to mass murder children, 140 suicide bombings in the Second Intifada. Every time Israeli politics' decision to move forward in that direction was shut down by the Hamas and Hamas-like entities on that side. Not all Palestinians, not every Palestinian. I work with Palestinians, I talk to Palestinians. There's a huge diversity in Palestinian views, but that part of Palestinian society. Your critique of Israel will matter as soon as Hamas is gone. You cannot have in the world a world that comes to the Israelis and says, you got to pull out, you got to stop fighting, you got to have ceasefires, you got to pull out of parts of the West Bank, whatever the demand is. And Hamas saying to them in their other ear, sometimes in actual Hebrew, including last week, we're going to murder your children from everywhere you pull out of. There is nothing you can do for the Palestinians that Hamas won't undo. And so if you're right wing, let's go after Hamas. If you're left wing, geez, you really want to go after Hamas more, because then you can actually be left wing and actually pressure the Israelis the way you want to. If Hamas survives this, Gaza does not wake up to a better day.
And last question, how soon can Israel flood Gaza with enough food so that food loses its value? That's a strategic, that is so important. How long do you think it can take to do that?
I'm hoping it'll take a week. I mean, we could do these complex, like aid operations, or we could just take huge stockpile of army battle rations and dump them on Gaza. I have eaten army battle rations. They're not very tasty, but they are very nutritious. And I think that it's possible to move a lot of material very, very quickly. If you come to the international community and you say, just hand me your emergency, rescue reserves, and let's just dump them on Gaza and we'll replace them for you the next month. I don't think that's the kind of thing that'll be impossible. The Prime Minister, by the way, has said that today. He has asked for international help in rushing that aid to Gaza. I think that's a sign of how the Israelis have woken up to how really just totally mistaken and foolish it was to play this game with Hamas.
Haviv Redigur, follow him on X at Haviv Redigur. Listen to Ask Haviv Anything. Read him in the Free Press. Of course, that magazine, that online paper is something you ought to be subscribed to anyway. Haviv, thank you. I'll check in with you in a few weeks, and I always appreciate the time.